Hey, Joe, a lot of people are underselling this next game. The Holiday Bowl is usually a fun one, but it doesn't look like one this year. And get this stat. I know that you already know it very well, but it could be an open and shut case for a lot of college football fans when they see that Washington State and Luke Falk have thrown 39 touchdown passes this season. Mitch Leidner in Minnesota, 8. That looks like a mismatch. But of course, football's more than just chucking it down the field. I believe in this Minnesota team. I think this is a good matchup. Washington State out of the Pac-12, Minnesota out of the Big Ten. Minnesota getting to a 5th consecutive bowl game. And considering the 4 teams that Minnesota lost to, I know that they're a substantial underdog in this game, but Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa, not coming up with the other team that they lost to.
Penn State.
Exactly. All one-score games. Penn State, an overtime game, and Happy Valley, all one-score games for Minnesota. This should be a really good game. I want to see this one start to finish.
Yeah, this is an intriguing battle because you bring up great points. It sort of reminds me of last year's game with USC and Wisconsin. You have a methodical offense in Minnesota that resembled Wisconsin last year with a high-octane offense in Washington State and Luke Falk that really played lights out from the second week of the season through the Apple Cup against Washington, did drop that ball game against Colorado and followed that up with a loss to Washington in the Apple Cup. But they're a high-octane offense, and they're averaging 126 rushing yards on the ground. That's the difference between last year and this year. Last year, they were in the area of about 80 rushing yards per game. The ability to run the football for Washington State allows Mike Leach to save his defense and hold a lead in fourth quarter games. But I think when you look at this battle overall, I really feel that this game comes down to Minnesota's defense, their ability to shut down the run consistently. They're only giving up 124 rushing yards per game. They're +8 in turnover margin, and they pound the football between the tackles with Rodney Smith and a physical offensive line that's averaging 187 rushing yards per game. You brought up the 8 touchdowns by Mitch Leidner with 12 interceptions. I put a lot of weight into that, but I also put in a lot of weight that he's had now 4 weeks to prepare. He's a senior. This is a quarterback in Mitch Leidner that was projected as possibly a first-round draft pick. You saw it a couple of years ago when Oklahoma played Clemson with Cliff Stout. He was a senior as well. He did not play well in the regular season and really stepped up in the bowl game against Oklahoma. I think this is the same type of scenario. I think Minnesota strikes the upset. I think they'll be in this game from start to finish. A lot of people are worried about the boycott. I think that'll bring this team together. I think the Golden Gophers get the upset in the Holiday Bowl. I think it's high scoring, too. Look for a shootout. These games always seem to be wild. We're due for a crazy Holiday Bowl. Minnesota strikes the upset.
And, Joe, you touch on something that's different about Washington State, and you alluded to it. I'm just going to expand upon it. So Mike Leach takes over there, a program that's winning 2 or 3 games. Of course, he installs the air raid offense. They get some quarterbacks in play that can throw, most notably and most recently, Luke Falk. Yeah, that's what gains the headlines and the attention of everyone. But Washington State just a couple years ago was running for like 2.5 yards a carry. There was no support from the ground game of the pass game. Jamal Morrow, James Williams, these guys are running for 6.5 yards per carry. They have developed a running attack. Sure, they're still going to throw it 45 to 50, but they're not throwing it 70 times now. And you would win a lot of bets in having people try to guess the third best rush defense in the Pac-12 is at Washington State.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you're absolutely right. That's why Washington State did reel off 8 straight wins in the Pac-12 since week number 2 because of their physicality on the defensive line. This is a defense that's only given up about 138 rushing yards per game, and they're positive in turnover margin. The one thing that you look at Washington State overall, they need success in the passing attack to run the football. When they really need to run the football diligently between the tackles in 2 of their toughest games against Colorado and against Washington State, against Washington, especially in the red zone, they struggled. So that's why I like Minnesota. They're a physical defensive front seven, play very good red zone defense, and that's why I think they match up very well against Wazoo in this battle. Again, I think a lot of points will be scored. I just think it'll be different types of ways that they'll score these points. I look for Washington State to attack Minnesota's secondary. That's the way you have to beat Minnesota's defense over the top. They're giving up around 218 passing yards per game. And the way you have to beat down Washington State, you can wear them down if you have a big physical offensive line, the way Washington did and wore them down in the Apple Cup. I think Minnesota could do the same. Look for Rodney Smith to have a big day, calling for the upset with the Golden Gophers.